I used to walk down from the Pantheon down to Jardin de Luxembourg in Paris, and there was this street where they had like medical shops and art shops and history shops, and it was all of these different bookshops that were all the way down. And I remember stopping and looking and thinking, my God, no matter how much I learn, I'll never ever know it all. But also feeling this sense of excitement about that. And one of the key things that I've learned from speaking to Lynn is this idea of be in a state of wonder. Just get up and want to learn as much as you can and find out as much as you can about life. And going through that process will take you away from yourself and away from your own ego and away from your own agenda and put you in a place of, well, I suppose, peace.
What is the human condition? I don't know what the human condition is. Wonder, curiosity, the ability to form inextricable bonds with people, our need for each other, our social tendencies, all of those things. I think, that's the human condition for me. Our ability to communicate, to share our thoughts and ideas, both explicitly and implicitly, our ability to walk into a room and get a sense from other people what's going on, but also our ability to articulate that verbally. It's not really any one thing, is it? It's just...
No, but that is what I'm discovering as I'm going along, and it's interesting that, I would have thought in my head that someone who's more orientated towards science would have given maybe a slightly different answer, but actually it is that the human condition is the human condition.
It's complicated.
Cool.
So I studied science here, actually, in Trinity, and loved it, really enjoyed it, but spent, I suppose, the way I would describe it is my formal education was in science, but all of my social life was based within the arts. So hanging out in the drama society, hanging out in the debating society, working within Trinity Arts Workshop, being in the middle of a canal, doing a puppet show, that was where all of my passions lay, but formally I studied science, and I came out, from my undergraduate still very much thinking I'm going to be a wildlife manager, and then I did that for 2 years and discovered that actually I didn't really like sitting in a field by myself. It wasn't sitting in a field counting plants or counting animals actually wasn't as compelling, it turns out, as I thought it would be. And then I kind of got back into sort of communications and arts. And then eventually sort of circled back around to working in this role and in this institution, which is very unique place because it's about this kind of merging of arts and science. I'm a real believer in curiosity, and I think curiosity manifests across disciplines. When you're a kid, you don't go, I am now thinking about a scientific question. I am now thinking about a question that, pertains to the human condition. I'm now thinking about a mathematic. You're just curious. You just want to know. And a lot of what I'm interested in is how you pluck people out of those silos and give them an opportunity to try on different versions of themselves. That they don't get to do in formal systems. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm, my mother is a psychotherapist and my father is an engineer. So I come from this really interesting perspective, if you like, of, that sort of interest in the human condition through the sort of psychotherapeutic elements through my mother's kind of learning, and then the kind of more, engineering, where's the equation, what's the logical framework to this whole thing here. And so what strikes me and what, is providing children the space to get lost in things and supporting that, that kind of, that sort of deep immersion. Yeah. That is really important to something that you're passionate about, that losing track of time. Yeah. And actually, I think that because of the kind of society that we live in at the moment, things kind of tend to jump quick, fast, and we're all in schedules.
We're not given space.
We're not really given the kind of space to sort of lose ourselves in a world that's either in our heads or in reality. And I really wonder if people who are lucky enough to pursue their passions and to do the things that they really enjoy doing, were given that space. I mean, even my own kids, their life is incredibly regimented. You know, I see my 3-year-old daughter when she plays, I mean, the whole gender thing is quite interesting because she's already playing being the mommy and stuff. But when she plays, she says, and now we're going to get on the train and we're going to drive, and then we're going to go to creche, and then I'm going to come and collect you and say, did you have a nice day? And I had a nice day. What did you learn today? Okay, now we're going to go home. Now we're going to have dinner. So she's she's like living her imaginary life through this kind of timetable because that's the way her life is, you know. And it does make me think of Jesus Christ. You know, maybe we need to pare down a little bit. There's a really interesting potential conflict between ego and opportunity. And I had this really interesting conversation with this guy called Roger Kneebone, who is a surgeon, which is hilarious in that kind of surname following what you do, your passion kind of thing, which is maybe you should do a whole other conversation around that, or people looking like what they do. Anyway, but we were talking about, he loves what he does. And we were talking about ending up in this big conference about ending up doing what you love and how that happens. And he, you know, he's a man in his like late 60s, I'd say, and he was saying, I just followed every opportunity that came along, even when it didn't really seem like it was a very sensible thing to do in terms of my career.
Yeah.
And that struck me as interesting because it relates to that ego thing that you're saying, that I think that passionate people are so led by just what they want to do and their kind of drive to sort of be immersed in that, that if it's led by their kind of big pride or weighty ideas of what kind of career they're going to have, actually it might end up going down the tubes. So if you're somebody who's just open to opportunity, led by that passion, not necessarily by where you sit within that context, being genuine and humility are two particular traits that are maybe underestimated in leadership and in a particular kind of leadership. People follow genuine people, and humility is critical, because if you're the person that's going around and saying, look at all of this stuff that I've achieved, nobody's going to want to hang around that kind of energy, you know. So humility about what your organization is doing, and humility around, you know, this, you know, the activity of the people that are working with you, and humility about your achievements, and where they sit in a really broad context is really important, you know, because otherwise you will I think you might disappear up your own ass fairly quickly, excuse my language, but I've seen it happen.
What do you think that success looks like out of a life well lived?
Like I feel hugely privileged by the fact that my work allows me to constantly explore and ask questions and find out new things and meet interesting people from totally different areas. And I find that incredibly rewarding, but I'm also lucky in that I have, you know, a network of people and family and friends who equally I have those kind of conversations with. I mean, even today, getting to have this kind of conversation with you, right, is incredibly rewarding. It's interesting. It's, you know, so I suppose success to me is around that human interaction piece, be that in whatever guise it is, and being kind of open to that, and being open to how it kind of changes you as well, actually.
What makes an individual say, this is someone I could be a partner with for the rest of my life? I could make this work for the long term.
That's such a hard question, isn't it? Because I think it's really, really different for different people. Because compatibility is a strange beast. I think it's that you have no doubts whatsoever about that person and your relationship and the support that you have for each other and what that love for each other means. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because if you look at love and the different hormones that come into play at different parts of a relationship, you know, when people are dating, you know, it's the testosterone and estrogen that are really high at that level, and it's when oxytocin kicks in, which is in where the trust part of a relationship begins. And oxytocin is the hormone that women release in buckets when they give birth. It's the trust hormone, is another phrase that's given to oxytocin. So it's the hormone that you give off, and it's about bonding. It's not about sexual attraction. It's about kind of fundamental linking, bonding, and that's why it's women release it after childbirth, because it's about that bond with the child. You can actually buy oxytocin online as a spray. I kid you not. It's incredibly
Does it
dangerous because
work?
it can actually cause miscarriage in women with at a late stage of pregnancy because it's a hormonal thing. But anyway, I don't know if it works or not. I mean, I think this idea of men and women spraying themselves in oxytocin and then going like into a bar to get like real trust at an early stage of relationship. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, so it's not that you can just kind of, I don't think you can jump into that kind of trust point of a relationship without that physical intimacy at the beginning either. So that's part of that process, you know, that sort of giving of yourself at a physical level, and that intimacy, and then how that leads into this next phase of a relationship that's more, you know, that's not just necessarily about a kind of physical sexual attraction, but there's something a little bit more deeper than that going on. But it's building off the back of that initial kind of energy. And I think that probably, if I was to look at that in the context of my own relationship, that probably happened at like from the ages of 13 to 30, which is kind of disturbing. Talk about the most long-winded romance, but in the sense of building.
It's built, yeah. Do you know when you look up at the stars and you look at like the size of the universe?
Yes.
Is it humbling? Is it like, I don't know. Because you
Why
actually
is it so
understand
humbling?
Well, you must understand what you're looking at.
I
just
totally
look at it and I-
don't. Oh my God, I totally don't understand what I'm looking at when I look at the stars. I guess that's kind of the wonderful thing, is probably that's why it's so humbling. I have like, I have ideas and people have told me what I'm looking at, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. I mean, in many ways, that's sort of the beauty of the human condition and the beauty of science. Is that
For all that we know, we don't actually know.
for all that we know, we don't actually know. We're constantly out there, you know, exploring, thinking about sending people to Mars, thinking about, you know, but we still don't know. Yeah. That's why I think so. I'm not religious at all.
Yeah.
But every time I meet a theoretical physicist, I'm always struck by how similar theoretical physics is to religion, because effectively, and there's probably lots of physicists who will kill me for saying this, but effectively they're placing all of their faith in something that they can't prove. Yeah. And there's this really interesting paper that I read, that if you're not going to bring your children up in any kind of religion, it's really important that you activate some part of their brain that forces them to believe in something that they can't prove. So if they're not going to believe in God, then try fairies out. Because that development of that part of your brain that can theorize while not having proof is really important. Yeah. Part of your creative development. So I suppose the message is, if you're not going to do religion, do fairies and Santa or the Easter Bunny or something. Yeah.
I love understanding why all these things. I want to talk to you all day.
Oh, but that's very nice. Thank you.
It's incredible listening to her, because I mean the energy and she's just a dynamo. But what's really interesting is that once again this common theme is coming up, this idea of time being a man-made thing, and that we need space to relax into whatever it is we're doing. I remember my brother used to sit and play Lego for hours and hours and hours on end on his own, and he was using his imagination, and he was given the freedom to go into that place whereby he was in a state of flow. And I've spoken about this state of flow before, but it is that idea of when you're rock climbing, or you're playing the piano, or you're engaged in an activity that requires you to take yourself out of yourself and let go of the ego. Children naturally do that, but given the time to do it, and for hours to pass, and for you to not even realize it's happening, that is key to happiness. It's just paramount, and it's exactly what she's saying. Allow children, and allow yourself, time for the imagination, time for wonder, time to engage in whatever you're curious about, and to forget about everything else that's going on around you. By following your passion, the thing that you love doing, regardless of what superficial success you're going to get from it, by being in a state of flow and engaging in your passion, that is key. And that when you forget about it and you try and be someone that you're not, or you try to start thinking, or you start thinking about what I'm trying to attain, who I'm going to be, that's when you lose, I think it's when you lose a little bit of yourself. And she's saying there categorically that if you love something, then go for it, and don't think about what the end result is going to be. Don't think about how the world is going to see you. Don't let yourself be driven by the ego, because we all fall down on that.